Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. So today's episode comes to you courtesy of Aaron, who's been supporting this channel as a Golden Pig tier patron. I truly couldn't do this without the support from amazing patrons like Aaron, so again, Aaron, thank you so much. And actually, for this episode, Aaron's gonna handle the intro for me.
Hey Mitch, this is Aaron from Salem, Oregon. For my personalized deck tech, I'd like to see you build around Omnath, Locus of Creation, focusing on a CEDH style build within the budget restrictions.
So as Aaron said, today's deck tech's gonna be built around Omnath, Locus of Creation with a more competitive build. Now, a quick disclaimer, I am not a CEDH expert or a CEDH player myself, but I am trying my best on this one, I promise. I'm going to be working to make this deck as competitive as possible within the budget restrictions. Because of course, every single card in this deck outside of the commander is less than $1, and yeah, that is quite the restriction for a deck that is working to be competitive. With all that said, let's jump into the commander. Omnath is a 4/4 elemental that costs red, green, white, and blue. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card, and it's got landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 4 life if this is the first time this ability has resolved this turn. If it's the second time, add red, green, white, blue. If it's the third time, Omnath deals 4 damage to each opponent and each planeswalker you don't control. So Omnath has a lot going for it, a 4-mana commander that gives you access to 4 of the 5 colors, and when it comes into play, you draw a card and you get a ton of value out of lands coming into play. Now, the first landfall trigger is, just okay, padding your life total a little bit by gaining 4 life, but the second is fantastic, giving you 1 mana of each of its colors, and the third one can be deadly, pinging all opponents for 4, and their planeswalkers as well. Now, keep in mind that there is an upper threshold to that landfall value on every single turn. Again, if you've got a 4th or 5th land coming into play, you're not getting any triggers. Though there are actually ways to reset this, and we'll be talking about that here in a bit. Regardless, yeah, Omnath can be a very powerful commander, so let's jump into the deck and talk about what this deck wants to do. Now first up, in a more competitive deck like this one, we're going to be working towards assembling certain combos to win quickly. And the first combo that I want to highlight focuses on cards like Skyshroud Ranger, Retreat to Coral Helm, and Simic Growth Chamber. This combo is quite simple and incredibly effective in a deck that utilizes landfall. Skyshroud Ranger is a 1/1 elf for a green that has tap. You may put a land card from your hand into play. Play this ability only anytime you can play a sorcery. Retreat to Coral Helm is an enchantment that has landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, choose 1. You may tap or untap target creature and scry 1. And then Simic Growth Chamber is a bounce land. It's going to enter the battlefield tapped, and when it comes into play, you return a land you control back to its owner's hand, and it can tap for 2 colors. So essentially, the combo again is very simple, and it works like this. You need Skyshroud Ranger and Retreat to Coral Helm in play, and Simic Growth Chamber in your hand. You tap the Skyshroud Ranger to put the Simic Growth Chamber in play, and its ETB triggers, forcing you to return a land you control back to its owner's hand, and you're actually going to choose itself. You choose Simic Growth Chamber. So Simic Growth Chamber is going to bounce back to your hand, and Retreat to Coral Helm is going to trigger. And of course, the choice that you're going to pick is to untap target creature, which is the Skyshroud Ranger. So you're at the exact same spot you just were, but you got a landfall trigger. Now, actually, obviously, this doesn't just win you the game if you keep doing this over and over and over again, but you can get other landfall triggers as many times as you want, though, yes, your commander does have a limit on the landfall triggers in a turn. Other cards do not, and those can win you the game in this deck. So really quick, let's talk about a few that can help us out with this, with things like Ruin Crab, Tunneling Geopede, and Valakut Exploration. Ruin Crab might just be a 0/3 crab, but it has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent mills 3 cards. So yeah, with infinite landfall triggers, your opponents are infinitely milled. And then Tunneling Geopede is a 3/2 insect with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, Tunneling Geopede deals 1 damage to each opponent. So obviously infinite landfall equals infinite damage to each opponent. Speaking of which, Valakut Exploration is an enchantment that has landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled. And it says at the beginning of your end step, if there are cards exiled with Valakut Exploration, put them in their owner's graveyard, then Valakut Exploration deals that much damage to each opponent. So essentially this can give you access to your entire library, or again temporary access, but that doesn't really matter, because of course on top of that, at the beginning of your end step, all those exiled cards hit your graveyard and it pings your opponents for a ton of damage. You know, like 80 damage or so, and usually that's enough to do it. Regardless, with this combo, there are some more replaceable pieces like those bounce lands. We actually have 6 more bounce lands in this deck that you've got access to with cards like Rule Turf, Selesnya Sanctuary, Izzet Boilerworks, Boros Scares, and Azorius Chancery, and even Guildless Commons. Each of these basically works in the exact same way, but they tap for different colors, or in Guildless Commons, that's going to be colorless, but still, they still work as bounce lands in this combo. Speaking of which, the replacements actually for Sky Shroud Ranger are cards like Llanowar Scout and Scaled Herbalist, which both can actually tap at any time, so you can do this at instant speed if you really want to. And then Marasa Root Grazer can't exactly combo because unfortunately it can only tap to put a basic land card from your hand on the battlefield, but it can really help you out when it comes to actually getting more and more landfall triggers in the game, especially since it can also tap to return a basic land you control back to its owner's hand. And then actually another card that can combo in a different way with Retreat to Coral Helm is Ruin Ghost. It's a 1/1 spirit that has pay a white, tap, exile target land you control, then return to the battlefield under your control. So while this doesn't combo with a bounce land in Retreat to Coral Helm, it does combo with a basic plains in Retreat to Coral Helm. Because essentially all you need to do is tap that plains for a white mana, exile it, and then it's going to come back into play under your control. The Coral Helm is going to trigger, then you untap the ghost, you do it again, and again, and again. So infinite landfall triggers in a different way. But now that we've gone over this combo, let's move on to our next one. And this combo actually utilizes the Golden Pig of our deck, which is the #1 card out of our 99. And the Golden Pig of this deck is Ghostly Flicker. It's an instant for 2 and a blue, and it says exile 2 target artifacts, creatures, and or lands you control, then return those cards to the battlefield under your control. We'll go through the combos with this card here in a bit, but basically the concept is, hey, let's just copy this an infinite number of times to get its effect over and over again. And when that happens, this is absolutely incredible with a commander like Omnath. Because essentially we can keep blinking Omnath over and over and over again and blinking a land over and over and over again to actually get Omnath's triggers as many times as we want. Well, okay, there is an upper threshold because Omnath does draw a card when it comes into play, but again, that's basically a good thing because we keep drawing more and more cards. And we can essentially draw our entire library. We can get infinite mana with this, and we can get Omnath's landfall triggers an absurd number of times. And obviously, when we've got our entire library and, you know, we've got a ton of damage coming out of Omnath because of all those landfall triggers, there are plenty of ways that we can actually win. But yeah, Ghostly Flicker is an absolutely incredible card, and that's why it's the Golden Pig of this deck. And it actually combos with 2 cards in this deck with Dualcaster Mage and Narumeha Master Wizard. Dualcaster Mage is a 2/2 with flash that has when it enters the battlefield, copy target instant or sorcery spell. You may choose 2 targets for the copy. And then Narumeha is very similar, a 3/3 with flash that has when it enters the battlefield, copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose targets for the copy. So essentially some small differences between these cards. Obviously Narumeha costs 1 more. It is legendary, which doesn't really, you know, matter too much with this combo, but it can only copy spells that we control, which again, really doesn't matter with this combo. The combo works like this, and actually I think I went into further detail, and I believe it was the Annalise the Cinder Wind episode. I think that's right, though that might have been with Twin Flame. Regardless, the combo works in a very similar way if you actually want to see it broken down in that way. Basically, the combo works like this. You cast Ghostly Flicker, targeting essentially anything that you can target, and before it resolves, you cast your Dualcaster Mage, targeting it. So you make a copy of Ghostly Flicker. Then you use that copy to target Dualcaster Mage as well as something else, like maybe a land. So that copy will resolve blinking that land as well as Dualcaster Mage, and then when Dualcaster Mage comes back into play, you get its ETB again, and then you're going to copy the original Ghostly Flicker again. So you can do the same thing over and over and over again, you know, blinking that land in Dualcaster Mage, or again, blinking another creature like, you know, Omnath to get its ETB or to reset it. Yeah, you can basically just do this as many times as you want. So essentially at the end of the day, you've got infinite mana from those lands blinking. Again, with Omnath in play, you can blink it over and over again to essentially draw your entire deck. And then you can just cast your entire deck. And there are plenty of ways to win from there. And again, obviously, you can also, you know, ping your opponents probably to death with Omnath's triggers, because you can keep resetting them and getting more lands into play, etc., etc., etc. There are a lot of ways to win from there, and yeah, Ghostly Flicker is definitely the most impactful out of these combos, though there are other combos that we can utilize. Because we can also utilize cards like Displace and Illusionist Stratagem to combo in similar ways. Displace says, exile up to 2 target creatures you control and return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control. And Illusionist Stratagem does the exact same thing, though it also lets us draw a card. Again, that drawing a card is nice, though essentially each of these do the exact same thing if Omnath is in play, because we can basically draw our entire deck. And obviously then there are plenty of ways that we can win from there. Regardless, how exactly are we going to get to these awesome combos? Well, of course, we're going to be utilizing some tutors in this deck like Instrument of the Bards, Signal of the Clans, and Uncage the Menagerie. Instrument of the Bards is a legendary artifact that has the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a Harmony counter on Instrument of the Bards. By paying 3 and a green, we can tap to search our library for a creature card with mana value equal to the number of Harmony counters on it, and then reveal it, put it in our hand, and if that creature is legendary, create a treasure token, then we shuffle. Basically, this is a repeatable tutor for creatures that can really help us out in a lot of situations. And then Signal of Clans is an instant that says search your library for 3 creature cards and reveal them. If you reveal 3 cards with different names, choose one of them at random and put that card in your hand, shuffle the rest in your library. Again, we've got multiple creatures that can combo in different ways, and in some circumstances, we've got, 3 creatures that essentially do the exact same thing. We're also going to be running Uncaged the Menagerie, which says search your library for 2 X creature cards with different names that each have converted mana cost X, reveal them, put them in your hand, then shuffle your library. So this can actually help us tutor for multiple creatures at different mana values depending on what we need. And we can also go get Retreat to Coral Helm with cards like Plea for Guidance and Drift of Phantasms. Plea for Guidance is going to let us search our library for 2 enchantment cards, reveal them, put them in our hand, then shuffle our library. And Drift of Phantasms is a fantastic card in this deck. It's got Transmute for 1 blue, so basically we can discard it and go get any card in our library that has converted mana cost of 3. So, like I said, this can go get us Retreat to Coral Helm, but it can also get us, Ghostly Flicker or Dualcaster Mage, whatever we need. We can also tutor for a land, like, one of our bounce lands with things like Sylvan Scrying and Nylea's Intervention. Sylvan Scrying is going to tutor for 1 land, and Nylea's Intervention is going to tutor for X lands, or it can deal twice X damage to each creature with flying. Regardless, once we've tutored for and gotten our combo ready, how do we actually protect it? Well, we can utilize cards like Autumn's Veil, Mandated Peace, and Flame Scroll Celebrant, or, I should say, Revel in Silence to help protect the combo. Autumn's Veil is an instant that says, spells you control can't be countered by blue or black spells this turn, and creatures you control can't be the targets of blue or black spells this turn. So yeah, this can stop the vast majority of counter spells out there for just 1 mana. And then Mandated Peace is somewhat of a strange card, but it can actually work to help protect our combos. It says, cast a spell only during combat, your opponents can't cast spells this turn, end the combat phase. So yeah, we can basically use this as a fog, but we can also just use it, to cast it during combat, and then our opponents can't cast spells the rest of the turn, so we're free to combo off. And then Revel in Silence is somewhat similar. It's an instant for white, and it says your opponents can't cast spells or activate Planeswalker's loyalty abilities this turn, exile Revel in Silence. Basically, if our opponents can't cast spells, it's very unlikely that they can stop our combo. And of course, we also have some counterspell backup as well with spells like Spell Pierce, Dispel, and Negate. Spell Pierce says counter target non-creature spell unless the controller pays 2. Dispel is going to straight up counter any instant spell, and Negate's going to counter target non-creature spell. We've also got Neutralize, which can counter any spell, or we can cycle it for 2, and Unsubstantiate says return target spell or creature to its owner's hand. So while this doesn't fully counter a spell, it does kind of delay a spell in a way, and usually that can be enough. Or, we can actually use it to bounce a creature back to its owner's hand, which can come in really handy. But now let's move on and talk about other ways that we can throw a wrench into our opponent's plans. So when it comes to removal, we're going to be utilizing cards like Alchemist Retrieval, Unravel the Aether, Oblation, Izzet Charm, Rip Apart, Echoing Truth, Depart the Realm, Return to Nature, Into the Royal, and Crust Contraband. Each of these can help us out in a wide variety of circumstances. And now that we're going through a list of cards, let's really quickly go through our card advantage spells in this deck with Epiphany of the Drowned Yard, Brainstorm, Faithless Loading, Factor Fiction, Cathartic Reunion, Behold the Multiverse, Careful Consideration, Rain of Revelation, Hieroglyphic Illumination, and Chemist's Insight. Okay, I'm pretty much out of breath, but there's one more to go, so here we go. Fertile Ground, Cultivate, Fall into Fertility, Hero, Growth from the Ashes, Search for Tomorrow, Edge of Autumn, Springbloom Druid, Growing Regrowth, and Rampant Growth are going to be our ramp spells in this deck. On top of those other ones that we already talked about that are part of combos, etc, etc, etc. But now that we've talked about every single non-land card in this deck, and actually some of the lands with the bounce lands, let's talk about the price. Like I mentioned before at the beginning of this episode, every single card in this deck outside of the commander is less than $1. So the estimated cost for this deck is $42.67, even though Omnath itself is like a $10+ card. But if you're looking for some extra savings if you've already got the basic lands for this deck, well, that can save you some money as every single land in this deck that is basic is counted at 10 cents a piece. And speaking of potential extra savings, if you buy this deck on TCG Player, you might be able to save even more by utilizing heavily played and damaged cards, which of course need a home too. Though do keep in mind that this estimated cost does not include the cost of shipping, which might vary depending upon where you live. And with that, the show has come to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thank you again, and have a good one.